Welcome, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Co-Girls on Air, a podcast exploring all things technology, female leadership, careers, education, and topics within the nonprofit sector. On this episode, we will be interviewing Alan Davis, who is the Chief Executive Officer at the Whitefish Community Foundation. So let's join Melissa and Alan to hear more of his story.
Alan, thanks so much for joining us. As the girls introduced, Alan Davis with the Whitefish Community Foundation. Thanks for being here today.
I'm excited to be here. This is a pretty cool studio. Congrats on getting it off the ground.
Yeah, we're really excited to have students leading this project, just to get different people from the community in, whether it be from tech, nonprofit, whatever. We're just so excited to be here and, to get to know more about you and the Whitefish Community Foundation.
Yeah.
So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, Alan, and also how you ended up at the Community Foundation.
I grew up in Tennessee, as we were just talking about, in Knoxville, and, lived in the suburbs, but being so close to Smoky Mountain National Park, I really got a love for being outside in the mountains. And so went to college in Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay.
At the College of Charleston, majored in geology, totally random. My dad always told me growing up that when you get to undergrad, you should just study whatever you think is interesting. Mm-hmm. He was on the admissions board for University of Tennessee Medical Center. Okay. And he said the best applicants he got were like art history majors. It makes sense. It's like, okay, well, you need to be a well-rounded individual.
Yeah.
Did not do anything in geology. And met my wife there, which was the really good part about going to College of Charleston. And so for, about 10 years, I kind of bounced around. I worked in the green building industry, designing and installing vegetated roof systems.
Okay.
Up and down the East Coast. Like
wow.
We had a project on CBS headquarters in Manhattan.
Yeah, like the rooftop gardens.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And my wife was going to occupational therapy grad school in St. Louis at the time, so doing the distance thing. And a part of her doctoral degree, she needed to do an internship in her field of interest anywhere in the country. Mm-hmm. Typically, people do it wherever they want to get a job, but we had done a lot of traveling, and so she really wanted to go overseas and found this internship at a pediatric burn clinic in Lima, Peru.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, I want to go to Peru and live there for 6 months. So quit my job, and we moved to Lima and I was volunteering at the clinic. She was working there as a therapist. And initially I was just the guy that could carry stuff around. So pick this up, help this patient out of bed. And after a month I asked the director, is there anything else I can do here? Because I went to college and I've, got some skills, don't really know what they could be. And she said, have you ever applied for a grant? And I said, no, but I wrote term paper after term paper in college, so I could take a stab at it. And they really needed help transitioning their medical records from paper to electronic.
Oh, wow.
So I found a grant program through Microsoft International and got them $100,000. And the really cool part is I was there long enough to see it implemented. So purchasing the hardware, the equipment, the software, and then helping them transition the records. And I saw what it did for their patient care.
Yeah.
And so the internship ended. We had a great time in Peru. And so we started looking at where we're going to settle down. I used to have family in Whitefish as a kid, so I'd been there multiple times. So she kind of had the job that could go anywhere.
Yeah.
I didn't really have that. I worked in a very specialized industry. So we looked at the hospital here in Kalispell, and they were hiring.
Okay.
And so Francis got a job and moved to Whitefish in 2013. And as soon as I got here, I just knew I wanted to get involved with nonprofits because that grant award just kind of opened my eyes that there's money out in the world that could be, funneled down to the community level and actually create significant impact. So I started working pretty quickly with Whitefish Legacy Partners. Mm-hmm. They're the nonprofit that manages the Whitefish Trail system and then puts the land around the trail into permanent protection. And I was there 8 years. I started as their program director and quickly moved into director of development, doing fundraising, grant writing, events. And the job became available. Linda Grady retired after 15 years at Whitefish Community Foundation. And so I went for it, got the job, and it's been a pretty exciting transition, I would have to say. But also, because I was in Whitefish previously, already doing nonprofit fundraising, and I think what was really interesting is I participated in the grant programs of the Community Foundation for 8 years. I was a participant in the Whitefish Challenge for 8 years. And so I got to see the other side of the Community Foundation from the nonprofit perspective.
Yeah.
That, along with there's a lot of overlapping donors, transition's been pretty good so far.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty long story, but that's how I ended up in nonprofits and specifically at the Community Foundation.
And really an incredible story. You meet so many people in the nonprofit community. We had a grant from MIT Solve this past year, which is part of it's a global community. And then we're part of a Stand Together Foundation, which is a national. And it's so amazing how many people in the nonprofit sector that do have like these stories, their path to their nonprofit careers was, all over the place. Mm-hmm. But as you said early on, like making like sort of a well-rounded individual coming into it so that you can have these, different experiences that apply and to not just have one perspective.
Right. And I think it served me well. Like while I was doing the roofing, I actually went to Alaska in the summers and worked on a fishing boat as a commercial fisherman. And so, I've just always kind of been a well-rounded individual, and fundraising and nonprofit development is all about relationships. And so like, how can you relate to the people you're working with genuinely? Mm-hmm. And I really believe if you're a good listener, you can find common ground with any individual based on your past experiences or connections. So I think it has served me well. My parents probably thought, oh, geez, he's going to work on the fishing boat again. When's he going to kickstart his career? But it's worked out for me.
Yeah. And again, so many people have similar, and my story and my sort of path to Co-Girls and to the, and nonprofits, I had so many different experiences, like on the programming side and teaching and just, organizations I was involved with even as a kid. But all these other random things in the mix. And so when people are like, oh, what is your career trajectory? I'm like, I don't think I have one. I've always it's been more organic and based on relationships and growing. And I'm really, really grateful for that. Even, the restaurant that we were involved with in Whitefish, I learned so much, even that it's applicable now.
Right. But that is nonprofits, because you get a job there thinking it's one thing, but then you end up wearing 4 hats because you've got these skill sets that nobody knew about. Mm-hmm. And then that's where the nonprofit can grow,
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
think when people hire for nonprofits, we get that question all the time. We're hiring a development person, who should we be going after? It's like, well, really, you want someone with a very broad skill set, because you just don't know how they're going to impact your organization. You might hire them for one thing and you realize, oh my gosh, they're incredible at this other thing, and allow them to have that growth. So you enter a nonprofit and I think everybody wears like 8 hats.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. I feel like in the nonprofit sector, especially ones that are, business oriented and really thinking about the development of their staff and all, it really is an area where people do get to explore their strengths and different areas. And we're very fortunate with Co-Girls that with like our internship program, we've kind of been able to do that for some of our students. And we want to do that more because wow, what a great way to help people develop their skills and learn and apply what they can do. And even with me, I think that's been part of, I think a lot of why I came to Co-Girls was partially my experience, but also the relationship. When Mary and I sat down to interview, it was like, wow, we could work together really well. And that's been a big part of
even though your worlds would never have collided otherwise.
Marianne, who was Lockheed Martin, NASA, like all this crazy stuff, and then I'm like, well, because I even asked her, are you sure you want me here at Co-Girls? I don't know anything about coding. And she's like, listen, anyone can learn to code, but nonprofits are, as you said, and fundraising in particular, it's all about relationships.
That's right.
And it's really awesome to be able to explore that and grow that. And which is part of the reason I think it's really great with the podcast. Like we get to bring people like you in and learn more and also share with the community. Sure. So, so you're at the Community Foundation. If you're in the Valley, I think, most people know that the Whitefish Community Foundation is more than just whitefish. Some people don't, though. But everybody...
I was going to say, you'd be very surprised. When I give big presentations, I always ask, raise your hand if you've heard of Whitefish Community Foundation previous to the talk, And I don't know, 50 to 60% of the hands go up. And then you say, how many of you heard of the Great Fish Community Challenge? Every single hand goes up. And so we're always battling that kind of from a perception point of view of Whitefish Community Foundation. It's got that name, And whitefish means something to different people.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a negative connotation if you talk to folks outside of whitefish, just because of the history. And so that's something that we're constantly kind of fighting, and it's an outreach and education opportunity. But somebody from Kalispell might say, well, why would I ever donate to Whitefish Community Foundation? What does that have to do with me? And so we are starting to really put some effort into simplifying our messaging and then talking about how we do impact the broader valley, because we are the community foundation for the Flathead Valley.
Yeah.
Our history is in whitefish, our core donor base is in whitefish, but the impact has grown immensely. And why it's grown is because there are nonprofits like yourselves that are based in Kalispell but provide services to the entire valley, if not the entire region. So sometimes we get caught up on that mailing address piece of like, oh, they're a Kalispell-based organization. Well, you are impacting people from Whitefish. You're impacting people from Libby and Marion and, all over the place. So, so to take a step back, I guess, for those people that don't know what we do, we were started 25 years ago. Our 5 founders really saw a need for there to be an organization that could inspire charitable giving, broadly. They also saw a need for there to be an organization that could bring donors together, simplify giving, and then multiply that impact so that you could provide direct funding, but also training resources to the nonprofit community so that they can be more effective at their missions, right? And then the third piece they really saw a need for is this idea that sustainable sources of operating revenue is really difficult to get sometimes. And so they made a really early commitment to growing endowments. That's a big part of our work as well, is to grow those permanent endowments so nonprofits can get annual sources of revenue they can count on year after year. So fast forward, 24 years now, we manage $65 million in assets. And I can kind of break that down. That can be a big number. And it's like, well, what does that mean? And we have over 3,000 donors a year. And of course, host and operate the Great Fish Community Challenge, which has just grown so much. And we provide a huge benefit to all of our nonprofit organizations locally. Nonprofits can apply for direct funding from us through our various grant programs. And then we have a nonprofit development program that works with nonprofits one-on-one on their finances, their governance, HR, some of those kind of business-related issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of going back to what you were saying, you touched on how operating can be really hard. And when you're applying for grants and things, you're operating in the nonprofit community. They often want your operating to be really minimal, or your overhead to be really minimal. And that, in any business that, that's very, very difficult to do. And to find those sources of grants and places that will fund just what it takes to operate every year can be extremely difficult. Yeah. And so with like the Community Foundation, you're saying with the endowments, that allows an opportunity for there to be security around some of your operating expenses every year.
Absolutely. As an example, our endowment is sizable. Our endowment for the Community Foundation is now just over $5 million, the principal balance. Yeah. And so that peels off interest every single year to us. And I went through a budgeting process last fall, and we get $200,000 a year from our endowment.
Oh, wow.
And as a fundraiser, I can't tell you the weight off my shoulders just to know that that's there. Yeah. It's always going to be there. And that we can take that money, that chunk of money, and tell our donors that 100% of our admin and overhead costs are funded by our endowment, so that your donation is 100% programs. That's impactful.
Oh, that's incredible.
It takes a big endowment to make a meaningful impact. And so part of the creation of the Great Fish Community Challenge, honestly, is that I'd say 80% of the organizations that participate are just applying for general operating money for their general programs. And that's kind of the beauty of it. Yeah. Donors are very clear when they give to an organization, that's what they're raising money for. But that's the big appeal from a nonprofit standpoint, is not only are you latching onto this huge momentum, but you get to raise money and get a big grant that is unrestricted on some level, so that your organization and your board can figure out what the best use of funds is.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We, us as co-growers, for example, when we applied for the Great Fish, we were able to leave it so general. It's like, okay, Flathead Valley programming. Right. We have programming, across the state, 38 sites, but, anything we raise in the Great Fish goes specifically towards our Flathead, which is, that's a lot of our students, or, about I'd say almost half of our students are in the Flathead Valley. And so, yeah, really amazing to have that and not having to write a grant specifically for like, okay, how are we going to fund this particular thing?
Right.
You know, or trying to create new growth to apply for new funding. And so it's really, yeah, that for us as a nonprofit is really amazing. And the potential of having an endowment where if there were part of our overhead, you know, or our annual budget that I were not having to raise every year, if it were built in, that's amazing. And can be so impactful for an organization to have that built-in revenue every year.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So we manage endowments for nonprofits. And the cool part about that is you latch on to a pretty big investment pool. So whether your endowment's $100,000 or $50,000 or $500,000, we have over 20 million in permanent endowment funds.
Yeah.
And so that you're kind of latching on to that big corpus. And so the investment fees are the lowest they're ever going to be. The returns are going to be really strong. And so that's a really good benefit to working with us to manage your endowment. So it's a big part of our work that we probably don't talk enough about.
And I think for some people, even on the nonprofit side, it can be like confusing and almost like this big ominous thing that you're afraid to even approach because you're like, I don't understand exactly how it all works. Having a resource in the community where you're like, oh, you know, oh, you're going to help us with that? Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. And so to talk a little bit more about ways that you help nonprofits in the area, which I think this number might be right. There are almost 300. There are like 300 nonprofits in the Valley, right? Is it more?
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if you include churches, I think it's way more than that.
Yeah.
But excluding churches, I'd say that's probably a pretty accurate number. We work with around 100 every year.
Yeah.
And it rotates. Some nonprofits will apply for funding and then take a year off, but around 100 local nonprofits is the number every single year that we provide direct funding to. And so we have various grant programs. Our spring grant program is called our community grants. You guys got a grant this year to support your program in Lincoln County, which is awesome.
Yeah, our Eureka program is off the ground now.
Yeah, that's great. And so that really is focused on smaller nonprofits or special projects of bigger nonprofits. They can apply for funding up to $10,000 each. And this year we granted out around $350,000 total to about 60 nonprofits through that program. The biggest program is the Whitefish Community Challenge, which we've already mentioned, but there's probably listeners that have no idea what is that.
Yeah, and that's really what I'd love to delve into.
And I think we should, because there is some confusion out there. Like, how is Whitefish Community Foundation connected to the challenge? It's like, well, we do the whole.
It's our thing.
Yeah, it's our program. We host it. We fundraise the match, whole 9 yards. But how it works is Whitefish Community Foundation throughout the year is fundraising a match pool for this summer fundraising campaign. Nonprofits have to apply to participate in the challenge. So they have been vetted through our grants committee, through our staff review. We feel really comfortable that the nonprofits participating are good stewards. They have the appropriate governance and board in place, and they're going to do the right thing with the grant money.
And you feel like that provides sort of a level of peace of mind and security for the donor.
Oh, it's
that
huge.
The money is going to go where it says.
It's huge, and particularly we fund the match pool from our core group of donors called our Circle of Giving. These donors give $5,000 or more every single year. Some are giving up to $100,000 a year now. And it's huge for them that their giving is simplified. They trust us. They trust that we're vetting the organizations, and they trust the money that's going out to them is going to go to the right place. So that is a big part of it. It is not an assumption that you're going to get in the challenge every single year. We do have a streamlined process for folks that have been in for a number of years, but you still have to apply every single year. So as a nonprofit, you apply to participate. Once you get in, then you're fundraising with your donors and you're leveraging the match. You're going to your donors, you're saying, now's the time to give to us during this 5-week campaign because Whitefish Community Foundation is going to provide a match on your gift. And we don't know what that match is. We have to wait and see how big the pool gets and how much is raised. And so we say it's a percentage match, but it ends up being meaningful. Last year, if you hit the $20,000 threshold, meaning if your organization raised $20,000, you got an extra $12,400. That's big money. And if you think about 77 nonprofits last year were eligible to get that match, you do the math on that. The match pool is $1 million.
Yeah.
So that's really the model, and it has just exploded. in popularity and impact, et cetera. And I think one of the reasons why is we really want to simplify giving from the donor perspective so that you could give to multiple nonprofits participating in the challenge with one gift. So let's say you wanted to give $200 and you wanted to spread it out over 5 organizations. No problem. We provide one tax receipt. We distribute the money to the nonprofits. We don't take a fee. 100% of the dollars go to the nonprofits. And that, I think, is part of the success.
Yeah.
We know that the average donor in the Whitefish Community Challenge gives to 4 different nonprofits now. And that's created this awesome dynamic with the participating nonprofits where they're getting new donors. Because people go to the website, they read our use of funds brochure, and they learn about Code Girls. They've never heard about Code Girls or what you guys do. And so they're like, that sounds awesome. And you get a new donor out of it. And then it's your job to cultivate the relationship with that donor to make sure they come back. But that's just a great side benefit to the challenge.
Yeah. And for us, when I log into, the portal, because everyone is very, like, you're constantly watching during the challenge. It's really exciting. You log in and you're like, oh my gosh, we had, all these new donations come in. Who are these people?
Yeah.
Why did someone in New Jersey just give us $150?
Exactly.
There's sort of a sense of excitement as well, because again, usually you're having to work so hard to find like who was interested, who wants to know about us. So that's a huge part of the challenge that is, just so empowering that we get to sort of, have help with that, and then also be just connected to a larger community.
Right.
I think a lot of times we really view sort of the competitive side of the challenge, and but really during that time is the only time during the year where, I'm seeing other nonprofit leaders and people from other nonprofits, for 6 weeks solid, we're seeing each other regularly and collaborating, talking and all that. And there's just so much joy and excitement around that, when a lot of times throughout the year, we're so isolated in our pipeline and, struggling really a lot of times, even when, you see your impact and you're celebrating, it can still be really challenging. And, but during that 6-week window, it is kind of a different world.
Yeah. That's good feedback. I talk about that a lot because we do have our heads down and we think like, oh, there's a struggle in my little world. But if you raise your head up, and what's going on in the Flathead with our nonprofit community is just inspiring. And so that's a role Whitefish Community Foundation plays, is to bring everybody together. And the spirit of the challenge is teamwork. The harder we all work, the harder I work to raise that match pool, the harder the nonprofits work to engage their donors, the more successful we're all going to be, right? Because there's that cross-pollination that happens naturally in the campaign. That's just really meaningful. And this is the 10th anniversary of the Whitefish Community Challenge. It's a huge year. Last year, just to give the numbers, last year, 3,000 donors gave in the campaign, in the 5-week campaign, and a total $6.2 million was raised for 77 nonprofits. So every year we're like, oh, how are we going to beat that milestone? How are we going to beat that milestone? But I think there's just a lot of opportunity. Only 3,000 donors in the whole campaign. But if you look at the population of Flathead County, and then so many people have connections to Flathead County that don't live here full time, I think there is quite a big capacity that we're going to see continued growth over the next few years. Yeah.
And like even with our board of directors, so we are, this is our 3rd year participating, and we never really, concentrated effort on a particular week, or like when, we were like, well, we're so new, we're not going to get one of the biggest catch or anything like that. But we, when we really started talking to our board members and our board members that really leaned in last year and reached out to their contacts and their, their networks, it's like, well, we have people all over sprinkled throughout the country,
right?
That can participate, that are now participating in the challenge because, our board members networked and, all of our board members now, we've grown our board. And so it's really like, whoa, we're going to have a network of people really spread out throughout the country who are contributing to a community foundation in Whitefish, Montana.
Right. That's interesting.
Which is really great. And also, I do kind of want to touch on, so as a donor, someone locally, why give during the challenge? Why, what are the benefits of giving during the challenge rather than just writing a check or giving directly to the nonprofit at some time?
Good question. We get that a lot, actually.
Of course.
I'd say the biggest reason to give is your impact is multiplied. Because we're providing that percentage match, you are literally getting more bang for your buck when you're investing in a nonprofit. So that's the number one reason. The second reason is hopefully you're going to get on and support other nonprofits. And so simplifying your giving with one donation is a reason to give. So at the end of your tax year, if you are itemizing, you don't have to track down 5 or 10 receipts.
Yeah.
You just get the one from us, and we're distributing that money out. That's the second reason. And then the third reason is the spirit of teamwork, right? The Whitefish Challenge is kind of the rising tide that floats all boats. And so when a nonprofit is really successful in challenge, it raises awareness of their work to the broader community. And those types of benefits, they're a little harder to put your finger on. But organizations that have been in the challenge since the beginning, they're just seeing this incredible growth. And we can't take, credit for all of it, but it's just all a part of raising awareness of your mission, your work in a new campaign where there's a lot of people paying attention. And as a donor, you can help the organizations do that. You can help with the momentum, because we've got that leaderboard. And as you say, it gets a little bit of a frenzy, but people pay attention to that leaderboard every single day. And they're like, who's on top? Who needs help? And it really becomes a pretty fun experience, I think, for donors and nonprofits. So yeah, we get that question quite a bit. But ultimately, I tell nonprofits all the time from kind of a back end perspective, you've got to see how the Whitefish Challenge fits into your kind of annual fundraising plan, because it's not the only thing. A lot of nonprofits have corporate sponsor programs, grant programs, end of year appeals, their own fundraising events. And so you just need to kind of look at that. And there's probably some strategy there. If you get a big donor that wants to give in the challenge or out, they might ask you, do you want it in the challenge or not? And that's up to the organization to decide,
Yeah, which recently I did have a bank that we reached out and they were like, actually, would you like us to give it here in the Whitefish? And I was like, yes, please.
Yep.
Because again, it's more bang for the buck, really. And so thinking of bang for the buck, a lot of people in the community, especially, right now, the financial stresses that a lot of us are experiencing and rise of cost of housing, living, all of those things. A lot of people sometimes feel like I don't have anything to give, or what I can give, like, why should I give? Because it's so little, or, it's not going to have an impact. But with the challenge, just a gift of $25 can, for example, if you were to concentrate effort and get the biggest catch, have the most individual donors of $25 or more, right, in a week, that could be an award of
$10,000.
$10,000.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. Throughout the challenge, we're always looking at fun ways to incentivize giving. We want to inspire people to give. And so we've done it since the beginning. The most donors received to a single nonprofit in a week gets an incentive grant, and it's always been $1,000. That's a big boost, but in honor of the 10th anniversary, we're going up to $10,000. And so I'm sure this is going to create a headache for our finance off team of processing all the gifts, but we really, that's the point. Yeah. We want everyday donor who's going to give $25 to feel like they're going to make an impact. Yeah. And you literally could be that one donor that pushes you over the edge and gets the organization $10,000 this year. Yeah. That's meaningful.
Yeah. And really, like, honestly, exciting for us too. Because, we being newer to the challenge and smaller, we were like, oh, we're never going to be, but then it was kind of like, you know what? Like, we're going to go for, we're going to really concentrate effort, because that is that's a meaningful impact.
And a success story with that is Foist to Blacktail Trails. They're a small nonprofit. I don't know how much exactly they raise, but they don't raise $100,000 in the challenge. So they're $50,000, $60,000. They've won the week 2 most number of donors like 3 or 4 years in a row because they have a strategy. They go all in on 1 week. And, I hope they can pull it off this year and get $10,000. That'd be pretty fun.
I was speaking to a board member actually last night. We were at the Montana High Tech Business Alliance happy hour and the governor stopped by, and so we were talking about the challenge, and she did mention that. She was like, "We get it, and it's amazing because we're just, we're small." So I think that there's something about that too that's really empowering and exciting for the community. And as a donor, it's like you could give $25 and it could turn into $10,000.
And we just did some numbers actually, because I've heard that a lot is, this perception that Whitefish has all the money, and how can a $100 gift actually make an impact? But we looked at the median gift in the challenge, which again, median is not the average. Yeah. It's the middle for all the number of gifts. And for donations that went to the nonprofits, it's $100. And then from the donor perspective, the total donation, it's only $200 is the median. But 6.2 million was raised.
Yeah.
So if you look at the aggregate of the people in the challenge, the voices, if you will, of our community, it's these $100 donations that are really driving it. Put your money where, you know, your heart is in a way. And I tell people all the time, look at your life and you're literally, what do you do after work? Do you go to a park? Do you go trail running? Do you listen to music? Look at your life, because I guarantee you there's a nonprofit in the Flathead that's directly impacting it. And then, you know, put your money where your trail shoes are, or, you know, if you enjoy the lake or the arts or health and human services, if something speaks to you, just make a donation, because you do have a voice and you can really make an impact.
Yeah. If you have a girl in grades 4 through 8,
there you go,
and you want them to be exposed to coding, computer science, and business, then Code Girls is there.
Exactly.
But so, you know, we're kind of wrapping up here, but to be really specific about the challenge this year, the dates are
right. We launch in 2 weeks. August 8th is the launch day. It's Thursday, and we're going to have a big party up in Whitefish at the new Three Rivers Bank location. It's such a good party because we don't ask much of the nonprofits except to come, socialize, have a beer, glass of wine if you're of age, or a soft beverage if you're not, and just come mingle. It's such a great place for nonprofits to get together, but it's also, we really want the community to come because it's a great place to learn about the nonprofits and engage with them on that person-to-person level. And, of course, we're going to give incentive grants. So if you give a donation of $100 or more at the launch party, that nonprofit will be entered into a drawing for $1,000. We're going to do 11 of those drawings at the launch day. So it kicks off August 8th. It's a 5-week campaign. The last day to give is September 13th this year at 5 o'clock. And you will see pop-up donation stations around the valley throughout the challenge. We'll be on the radio, actually, 2 days a week throughout the challenge, inviting nonprofits to KGEZ to talk about their work, which is just such a good partnership. And then on September 7th, a Saturday, we have a 5K, 1 mile, and para-athlete 5K up in Whitefish, and a community fair for the nonprofits. And I think that is just such a great time, too, where all the nonprofits come. Everybody has their booths out, and you can really go through and learn about what's happening in the Flathead.
Yeah, my son loves it. He'll come, and it's an exciting environment, and mom and people at the Code Girls tent are like in tutus with unicorns, and but he gets to go over and be pushed down a little slope on a kayak from Montana Kayakers Academy, and he's going around seeing what CryJ, throw glitter, not shade. Right. He's just going around, and it's just it's a great environment. And just a really great day for everybody to celebrate what we're collectively doing. Right. And to be able to celebrate all the hard work that the Community Foundation puts in. There's so much back end and work leading up to it. It's like we show up and we help and we go and we wave pom-poms and all those things. But that's
kind of the goal, right? We want it to be easy for the nonprofits. We want it to be efficient for you. And we track that on an expense standpoint. How much does it cost the Community Foundation to host the challenge? It's $300,000 a year. That's a big expense, and it's a part of our program and our mission. So we're more than happy to do it. But it's a lot of work. 11,000 gifts that we process through our office during the 5-week campaign. This year, hopefully, will be more. And then after the challenge ends on October 22nd, we'll be back at the Wacholtz College Center for the award ceremony. And we really want the community to come to that because it's such an inspiring night. We tally all the donations, and hopefully I've done a good job of raising a record match, and we're going to announce the match at that award ceremony. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's always exciting because you're kind of like, okay, what's it going to be? What's our final number after the match? And it really is exciting. And again, there are people around the valley that I only see at Great Fish events. And so it's just like, oh my gosh, it's a really great community event, and just, a great spirit there. So so August 8th through September 15th. 13th.
It's a Friday.
It's a Friday. There we go. You can give online through.
Oh yeah. We accept all types of ways to give. Credit card, online, through our website. And that's kind of convenient because you can shop. You put donations in your cart, and then it's one transaction checkout. You can give the check. We're going to be blanketing the valley with donation forms, every weekly paper throughout the whole challenge, the Daily Interlake once a week. we'll have a donation form actually in the paper that you can cut out, fill out. And then, we're seeing gifts of stock and actually IRA rollovers becoming a big portion of giving, particularly with, baby boomer population, that they've got these traditional IRAs and there's a tax incentive to donate out of those funds versus their checking accounts. And so donors can give through their IRA accounts directly. They can give gifts of stock to us. And we process all of those. And
if a listener wanted to know more specifics and learn more about that, they can reach out to the Community Foundation to learn everything they need to know.
100%. Yeah, we can facilitate gifts. We don't take gifts of property. It's got to be have a cash value.
I would take a gift of property personally. But
Co-Girls could maybe deal with that. Or if you want to give property, we just ask folks, like, you've got to be in charge of selling it and then pass along the money to us. So we try to make it really easy to give. That's the point.
Yeah, and being able to go online and, people could go onto the site, go down, collect, select Co-Girls and give, and also look at the other nonprofits. It is like Amazon for Flathead Valley nonprofits.
Yeah. And there's 80 nonprofits this year.
Oh, wow. 80.
Yeah, a record. Yeah. not a huge increase from last year, which was a little bit comforting for us. We're a little worried, like, oh my gosh, because the more nonprofits we let in, the matches, right, has to be spread out a little more. So we're always kind of weighing that as the impact, meaningfulness of that match. But this year we just didn't have as many apply. So 80 nonprofits were accepted this year, and last year was 78 were accepted. So just 2 more.
Yeah. So 80 this year. That's a big number.
It's a big number.
It's a big number.
Yeah. Yeah. So make a gift.
Yeah.
Get inspired. If you don't know about being charitable, it's a great way to get involved. And I think you just feel good about it. You make that gift, and then, that nonprofit subscribes you to the newsletter and starts talking about the impact of the gift. And that's really where you can dig your heels in as a donor to feel like you're making a difference.
Yeah. And no matter how much you have to give, whether it be, $20, $25, or if you are a multimillionaire and have, expendable income there, it really everything in the nonprofit sector. And when you're fundraising, when we look at our fundraising throughout the year and like, wow, how did we got through that number in all of these different ways?
That's right.
And it really is incredible. And looking at how what a communal effort it is.
Right.
And all of the different amazing nonprofits that are out there.
I do talk about that a lot, is meaningful gift. What's meaningful for you as a donor? Because there could be donors out there that a $50,000 gift on some level might be less meaningful than a $250 gift of a single mom with 3 kids. They're pension pennies. And so a $250 gift from someone with not a lot of disposable income, that's meaningful.
That's a meaningful gift. Yeah.
That's really important. So it all adds up.
It all does. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Alan, again, thanks so much for coming today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really had fun.
Yeah. And it's great. And it's also really, it's nice to have a platform to be able to have these conversations and really explore it, because we have the listeners who probably didn't know a lot of the things that they were able to learn about the challenge, which is coming up very soon.
It is.
And so we're really excited. Thanks so much for joining.
See you at the launch party.
Yeah, we will.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Next week on Co-Girls on Air,
I had seen that Mary Ann had put something out in the paper about starting a coding club for girls. And really, I was just wanting to learn more coding, but I was willing to be the volunteer to help out. And so I started week 1 with Mary Ann, and we built the curriculum, through the years. And some of the time was spent in my classroom, using the computers in my classroom, and just small steps from there into what it is today. And it's been an amazing journey.